Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my series on Dune Messiah. I am doing a chapter by chapter summary and analysis and preparation for the Dune 3 movie, which is coming out in December 2026. I'm very excited about that. I should note as I go through this series, I'm reading the book. The movie's based off that. You might get some spoilers, so just keep that in mind before you continue this video. I'm going to be giving you an overview of chapter 3, and it's a very interesting chapter where we get to learn about Paul a whole lot more and some of how he's feeling about him now being emperor of the universe. Before we get into that, though, my name is PJ Dudek. I am a sci fantasy author. I have some very exciting book launches coming up in the summer. If you would like to learn a little bit more about me and my writing, please head over to my website at www.pjdudek.com. And you also have the opportunity to sign up for my monthly newsletter, and I hope to see you over there. So, heading into chapter 3, we're kind of pulling back a little bit from the conspiracy focused chapters 1 and 2 and getting deep into Paul's head. So, the chapter starts off with Paul wandering Arrakeen. That's kind of the capital city of Arrakis, which is also known as Dune. And he's in a still suit, of course, because he needs to stay hidden. The people around him can't know he's an emperor or he's going to be in potential danger. And he's just finished a nice stroll and he's back in his chambers. They're fairly modest for an emperor, but Paul's really not into all the glamour of power. In fact, he's actually somewhat morose from the position he's in, meaning he's accepted his role as emperor, but he has a certain degree of hesitancy around it because in his heart, he kind of perceives he's basically a pawn to a position. It's a really interesting theme, and I think it's one that Herbert's going to continue to unravel as this book continues. The next major plot point in this chapter is Chani comes into the chamber, and she's very concerned about Paul. And as they begin a discussion, we find out Chani is wanting Paul to have an heir. And Chani hasn't been able to have a child since their first child died in book 1. And she's suggesting that Paul actually have a child with his wife, though again, she's a wife in name only, the Princess Irulan. Paul's not super thrilled with Chani recommending this because he's very much in love with Chani and she's really his actual partner, even though she's only a concubine. But Chani, coming from the Fremen culture, there's sort of an acceptance that leaders might take on multiple wives and bear children through them. So you can tell she's not loving this idea, but again, she really thinks it's important for Paul's future, for the future of this world. Paul digs in a little more and he finds out that Chani had actually overheard a conversation between him and Irulan that had happened earlier. So Irulan often is off-world, talking amongst others in power, and Paul kind of allows for this because he sees her as a way to stay close to some of his potential enemies, even though she's not exactly an ally, as we found out in previous chapters. And she was really pushing Paul for a child. Her motivation is to basically have a baby that's going to eventually become emperor. So it's a power position. But Paul worries that once she gets that, that'll open up the door to her possibly wanting more things. And that would likely look like some of the conspiracy stuff that we're already seeing unfold in earlier chapters. At the end of this chapter, Chani sort of lets go of her argument about Paul having a child with Irulan, and they have a tender moment as Paul continues to really think through and I don't know if I want to say accept, but understand that he's in this particular role as emperor, whether he likes it or not. Even if he was gone, this whole jihad that started because of him, it would continue. There's really nothing he can do about it. So again, a pretty good chapter in regards to character development. So far, Messiah is definitely less heavy on the action, although Dune 1 wasn't super action heavy either. It was a little more character focused, but Messiah has been very much character focused so far. So be curious to see how this continues. Definitely getting a lot more depth in the terms of knowing about these different characters and excited to see what happens next. Till then, take care. Bye.